Hello, hello.
Hey, how are you, Sue?
Hi, Lynn. Hi, Aldwyn. Welcome to Martin Place.
Yes,
Oh,
hello.
thank you, guys.
A whole lot of wonderful supporters here of the Brumbies.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Media Queen TV. We're on the ground with a lot of other amazing people. Right now in Sydney, outside Martin Place, outside Penny Sharp's office. Now, Penny Sharp is the Labour member in the environment. Doing a great job exploring and killing a whole lot of drum in Kosciuszko National Park by the most cruel methods out there right now, and on the ground rallying for our Brumbies. So tell us what's happening down there.
Yes, posters. Posters up. Hey.
There we go. Thank you for that. Excellent. And of course, Lin Sutherland from World TV.
Hello,
Fantastic,
everyone.
fantastic
Hi, Lynn.
woman of the world. So Steve, tell us what's happening on the ground there at the moment.
Okay, so at the moment, it's Friday afternoon, and so we've got a bunch of fellow supporters of the Brumbies here. I'll just show you everyone here. So quite simply, I've been on the ground here in Sydney for about the past 3 weeks, and I've aligned with all of these wonderful people who have come out on a Friday night. So there's many more people. There's a lot of people that are down on the South Coast, and there's people that are online and lots of digital warriors. But quite simply, we've got our different posters here, and I've got different people that we can talk after Lynn. But yeah, we've all gathered here to support the protest against the Brumbies being culled.
And the Telegraph, the media reporter is here.
We've also got a media reporter here as well. So
Telegraph.
yeah, we've got the Telegraph here
Fantastic.
as well. So that's wonderful. We've got the peace officers here, which is lovely. So yeah, so I'll leave it to you, Aldwyn.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you for the great work you're doing there on the ground. Now, I know there's a lot of people who are very upset and angry about what's been going on with aerial Brumbies, which are also there with us. And I know Lynn has done a documentary about a lot about the Brumbies. And Sue,
Aldwyn, you may have to mute the one in the city while you talk because it keeps picking it up.
Yeah,
So just while you're talking. Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right, that's a bit better. So yes, there's been a lot of anger in the community around what's been going on and the very cruel methods of this shooting in Kosciuszko National Park in New South Wales right now. Lynn, can you share a little bit about your involvement with this?
Yeah, well, when people, I've been pretty much involved with the Brumbies. I remember a decade ago getting an email about Brumbies being this invasive species, and I've done a lot of work in different destinations all over Australia with Brumbies, and I always felt they got a unfair rap. So I actually went down to Snowy Mountains, into the mountains, to investigate what was going on, and that's, and really got to understand and see how the Brumbies work and realize that the Brumbies aren't necessarily doing the damage. There's been so many environmental factors going on, including pesticide poisoning, which I believe, and even cloud seeding, all these things that aren't announced that really harm the environment. And I just think that a lot of times they just need a scapegoat, and the Brumbies are simply the scapegoat. And media was silent through this whole thing, and you can always tell when media speaks, it's the same language. It's like a central dialogue, and the dialogue doesn't change, it just stays the same. And as everyone knows who's standing right there, that the numbers just were so false, and you could see on ground that there weren't Brumbies that were eating through places. So when you actually go as a journalist, which journalists should do, they shouldn't just take a press release and put that press release out to the world and say that's the fact. A journalist should go and investigate the scene of what's happening. And that's what I did with other good journalists, mind you, who were speaking out and have for a long time. And they were people that knew the numbers weren't right. So the media has a lot to explain in this, so much. And their radio silence till now, I'm glad the Telegraph's there. But it was just such a shame that there was radio silence through this whole thing, and even the last couple of weeks leading up to now. So thank you, Sue, and all you guys being there, because you stand for truth and you stand for the Brumbies, and you stand for something much more important. So please, can some of you share some of your stories?
Yes. Got Tony here. Tony would love to say a message to you, actually, there, Lynn.
Thank you, Lynn. You've been doing a wonderful job with all your photography and interviews. Thank you very much. And I think it's wicked that they are falsifying the numbers of Brumbies and saying there's 14 to 16,000 when that's not possible. And the recent counts are disputing that and saying that it's around 500 to 600, under 1,000. And those poor Brumbies are left there now, and they will be completely eradicated if they go in shooting them. They do not do a headshot because they are following them with a helicopter, and they're frightened, and they get 7 bullets to 10 bullets into their bodies, and they're left in agony to die. If that happened to a domestic horse, the RSPCA would prosecute you.
Yes.
Coleman told Wes Fang that in Parliament. I would prosecute you. So he said, what is the difference with a Brumbie? It's still a horse. It still suffers. Oh, no, they were funded extra money to keep quiet. So RSPCA are in this up to their eyebrows. So
Absolutely.
unfortunately, they're not protecting the horses. And Penny Sharp won't listen. Chris Minns, we thought, would listen. He doesn't listen. It's very sad. And we need to protect those Brumbies and stop the cull that's going on now. Pray they listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
And Tony, what's Tony's involvement? What's her background with the Brumbies?
Tony, what's your involvement?
I've been involved with horses most of my life. I grew up on a farm at Wagga. We owned a Brumbie. My sister had a Brumbie. We all rode horses, and I've been involved with them and very concerned about the plight of the Brumbie over the years. And so then I became involved in the last 4 years. And I belong to Brumbie activist groups because I'm trying to help them. Thank you.
What's your experience with Brumbies, Tony? As in, you said you had a Brumbie. How did you find the Brumbie that you had there?
Sorry,
The Brumbie that you had at your place. How did you find the nature of the Brumbie? Because they're trying to paint these Brumbies pests, etc. And from what I've seen, they're the most gentle natured animals.
Aldwyn, if you're going to talk, you have to mute.
Oh, he was a beautiful Brumbie. He was a grey pony. He came from out of Minnaby, and we called him Minnaby. And he lived with us for a long time with all the other horses, and he was a very gentle nature. And it was used in the Pony Club and the Wagga Show and various shows around. So he was a lovely pony. And wild horses are different from domestic horses. They're more fine-tuned to the environment.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. Thank you for sharing. So,
I've got another couple of ladies as well. Here we go.
Great.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Christina. I'm Tony's daughter. What I would like to say is that the way that they are slaughtering these Brumbies promotes cruelty. It promotes violence. If any of us did this, we'd be behind bars. But they're allowed to do this, and all the pleas of the thousands and thousands of people have just fallen on deaf ears. They're not listening. The arrogance that we go out there to speak to them and they just don't answer us. Their ego. But silence is guilt. And
100%.
the Brumbies are just about a breed unto themselves because they contain the genetics of so many endangered breeds of horses going way, way, way back. They should be cherished, and they should be recognised, and they should be managed properly and put into a breeding program. Make them a breed unto themselves, the Australian Brumbie, and breed them and manage them properly. Don't just kill them so that they lie there getting eaten by wild animals, dying a slow, agonizing death. And the RSPCA started off to protect horses back in the 1800s. And here they are saying it's okay. So the RSPCA themselves are promoting cruelty when, ironically, they're supposed to be defending it. Like, there's people having heart attacks. I've read of people, elderly people, having heart attacks over it. I myself cannot sleep. I wake up every hour. I'm on the phone to see, on Facebook, to see if any of them have been shot. I'm shaking. My anxiety is through the roof. I'm desperately trying to get down there, but I can't because of logistics in my own life. I've just lost my father, and now I'm looking at the Brumbies, and I'm beside myself personally, and that's not just me. It's disgusting, and it needs to be addressed, and it's actually criminal what they're doing. People have dug into it, and it's against the law, and it's going to happen, and then they'll go, oh, so sorry, my bad, and it'll be too late. There'll be none left except for the ones that we've saved. But there are so many beautiful, like, they're all gorgeous. Like, why not utilize that? And you can do so much with them. The soldiers use them for PTSD. Like, dig further. Don't all these people, they come in and they do all these things. They knock down all the heritage. They look at Victoria Barracks. Like, there are things that are sacred to the foundation of our country. And
do you
needs
think
to be protected. Pardon?
Do you think, Aldwyn, can you mute for a sec so I can talk? Yeah.
Yep.
Not you. It's them it's the noise in the city that does it. But I think what the tragedy is here, RSPCA got $15 million as a donation to allow to say that 15 shots, and it was actually 15 shots that each horse can have. So some of these horses are laying there for ages, and literally they can have 15 shots in them before they are legally allowed to call it cruelty. And I think the other tragedy is those that are on the mountain, very well that the Brumbies are literally being used as a scapegoat, because they actually are worth a currency to these people, because Snowy Hydro and all these corporations that are doing this damage around Australia, they have to repay that damage by paying hundreds of millions of dollars into a bank account, and they have to offset this damage. And the Brumbies are classed as an offset, which means by killing the Brumbies, they say it's a like for like carbon credit, which means that's their way of helping the environment. So what's happening is, while they're putting the pesticides and doing all the damage, the Brumbies is their currency for paying that. And then they'll put the propaganda of the media in at the beginning, but they'll also put the propaganda. You'll see, they'll go, oh my God, the marine life's flourishing and all these things are happening because they've been asked to stop the weed control. They've been asked to stop the cloud seeding, and now marine environments will recover. But because they've shot the Brumbies, they can say, oh, look, it was the Brumbies. So I think the tragedy is here. All these people are hurting because none of this makes proper sense. And Brumbies offer us, like we talked about before, Aldwyn, an alternate to transport. Like, they're all going on about fuel. Well, why can't we use Brumbies as a fuel-free? Not only we stop pesticides because they won't use pesticides in the mountains, but we can use them as some form of transport. And all these things are completely valuable. So if we were really going through this climatic change and fossil fuels meant so much, you'd be increasing Brumbies on the planet and not killing Brumbies. So it doesn't make sense, because the more Brumbies they kill, the more machines they bring out. So I think we've got someone else.
Well said.
Yes,
Thank you.
we do.
Hi.
Hi, this is Karen.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Karen.
Yeah, very good. Well, not so good, because it's very sad, actually. I'm like, where everyone's struggling this week. I'm suffering really badly, I think, like physically, like emotionally, mentally. and I can't work, and I feel absolutely sick to the stomach about what they're doing to these horses. I've tried in my power to get people into Sydney the last 3 weeks so we could get the numbers, so we can show this evil government that we mean business. We mean that we do not want these animals to do, because they're our Brumbies, they're part of our history, they're part of our culture, as you know, and they're the heart of Australia, and it's the spirit of Australia, and it's the year of the horse, and I don't understand why are they doing this to our animals. Like, they're not only just doing it to the horses, they're doing it to the koalas, the wombats, the dingoes. I think it's for the World Economical Forum and the United Nations. I think they've got an agenda, and it's all about this net zero, which is nothing to do with Australia. It's criminal what Penny Sharp's doing, and she's hiding documents, as everyone knows. And she's been suspended 4 times, so I really believe she should be sacked. Ray Hadley, he's going hard on her as well. He has some documents that she's hid from the media or from the government, because that's why he's so against her, because he's all for the horses. I just hope and pray that we can do something, because every day, while then helicopters are up in the air shooting those horses, we're losing another Brumbie. And there's not many left, as everyone knows. There's less than 600, because I've spoken to people that are down there, and they know there's not that many horses down there. There's not 16,000, or there's less than 1,000. So we just need people, and we've got people down there now, camping down there. I want to get down there as well. I want to help. I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to get down there, and you've got to put chains on your car. I'm not experienced in all that kind of stuff, but I really want to get down. I can ride. I've had horses all my life. I grew up with horses. They're lying about, they're only in foal for 10 months, and they have a foal every 2 years. And Penny Sharp's lied about, making out they're like rabbits, they're like breeding, and that's not what horses are like at all.
She's making out they're having litters.
Litters. She doesn't even know what they're foals. They're not litters. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
She doesn't even know anything about horses. They're the beautifulest creatures. They're the heart and soul of Australia. And that's all I've got to say. Sorry, I can't even see you, and I can't hear you.
That's okay.
You're doing great.
I'll let the next lady speak.
Okay. I have Eve here.
Hi.
Thank you, Karen. Louise.
Issue. I mean, these horses could be shot any time now. Shot in the most horrific way. Something like 7.5 bullets per horse, per Brumbie. And they seem to target the parents, or the adults, and they just leave the poor babies alone to be eaten up by scavengers. How about that? That's pretty cruel. Also, the government, they say, part of their lying about the numbers, between 2023 and 2024, there was a 165% increase in the number of Brumbies at the Snowy, at the Contest National Park. How can that be? One Brumbie has one mare every year. They take 11 months to nurse their babies. Not every mare has a baby. And they die, natural, the weather, the harsh conditions. It's absolutely impossible. People on the ground actually say they're under 500. That is the truth. They would know. The counting is really, really erroneous. The government needs to be more transparent. It's absolutely despicable. And also, why can't other countries, they protect their wild horses? Spain, Portugal, France, the UK, America, Canada, China. China reintroduced wild horses that had never, ever been in the wild before. They reintroduced them to do a test in their deserts. Their deserts were causing lots of problems, including, I think it's the Gobi Desert. including for Beijing with all the sands of the desert polluting Beijing. So they just put these horses that had never been in a desert in the wild before, they put them there, just left them to their own devices, and then they figured out how to just, be wild again. And do you know that the desert bloomed? It really, really bloomed. The plants start growing, no more sand, the water, the horses just knew, well, with their hooves, the hooves are actually really good because it digs into the ground and sort of accesses the water, and the plants grow, and the horses' manure is absolutely amazing. So it's very likely that the lushness and the beauty of the Cosio National Park is actually due to the Brumbies. How about that? And we know that Chris Minns and Penny Sharp, they're corrupt. They're getting paid. That, what is it called? The species, what's that horrible organisation?
Invasive species.
Invasive species. They're corrupt. It's all about the money. They don't care. We have to protect our Brumbies. We own the land. The government doesn't own the land. We own our Brumbies. They are ours. We are not going to let them become extinct. We're going to fight to the very end.
Yay, thank you very much.
Good on you.
Hi, I'm Mandana. And different words, same message. Stop the cull. It is, what have these poor Brumbies done to deserve this? On the one hand, we rescue a stranded whale and we get kudos for animal rights and rescuing animals. And then we do something like this and go out and kill voiceless, innocent Brumbies. Why are we doing this? They have as much a right to that land as anyone else. And the other message that I read was a lady from the US said that apparently they had done something similar in US and they realized after the cull that these horses actually eat the undergrowth. So they prevent fires. They're actually not damaging ecosystems. They're perhaps helping us. And then for this, resort or the bike tracks or whatever else is proposed over there in the name of saving native wildlife over there, what's going to happen when the trees are pulled down, when this resort comes up? What happens to the native wildlife then? Hopefully or even to the goes to the resort. Yes, hopefully no one goes to the resort.
Yes, Snowy Hydro. Did we mention that?
Yeah. So why are we doing this? For what? Is obviously someone's got bulging pockets somewhere.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you.
So
Hi.
did we mention about the Snowy Hydro too? Has that been mentioned?
Go. Yeah, it has, but please, you might add more light. Go for it.
Oh, I just want to bring it to light. We've got Michael on the ground down there, and we had pictures up about the Snowy Hydro too. And supposedly ski chalet is meant to go ahead, and also power lines.
Power lines,
with power, the
So
transmission
they've knocked all
lines
the
are.
trees down,
Yep.
shot the koalas.
That's it.
Aren't koalas
Cleared all the land between the power lines.
becoming in danger of being extinct?
Yes, they are.
And they're shooting them as well.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
Can I just say one thing too?
Your name?
Jenny.
Hi, this is Jenny.
Hi.
Jenny.
Hi. I just wanted to say that the farmers are crying out for money because the wild pigs are destroying their crops and everything. They're spending all this money on a cull, which just isn't necessary. It's there's not the number in the park. I've been down there. It took me ages to find any Brumbies. People can sit out there with them, you can be going through the worst thing, but you sit there with the Brumbies and they just make everything better. They're good for us. We shouldn't be killing them. So, yeah.
No, we absolutely should not be killing them. Absolutely. This is absolutely.
It's actually, it's really getting to people in the past few days this week because it's been 3 weeks. And the thing is, I'm used to managing a beach and there's no clear directive whether actually any have been shot or not. There's been, I heard that, I don't know if you know, but Pam Gregory did a worldwide meditation, supposedly on the Tuesday. It was very misty, so they're not sure if they were actually shot. We actually don't really know if anything's, have any been shot?
I heard 700, but I'm not going to swear to that because I only heard
Have been shot?
Yeah, but I only saw that on one
Okay.
website.
Okay, 700 have been shot.
No, those numbers will be bogus. Don't believe a word they say.
I'm not sure.
I mean,
about that.
that's probably what they're trying to say, because they want to justify that there was 16,000 horses. But a lot of people that were up at those mountains know there weren't that many Brumbies there to start with, that they'd actually moved a lot off. So as we said, you cannot rely on any numbers. So it's best just not to even guess, because last time they said they shot 5,000 horses and there wasn't even 5,000 there. So you just can't believe anything that the media is saying, not a word. So yeah. But they are on the ground actively, I heard, chasing them around. So we don't know what's happening. We don't know how many are being killed. So, yeah.
Yes, we've heard they're running quad bikes, right? So I heard initially the quad bikes were going into the Brumbies out into the line of helicopters, and the shooters. Now we've heard that they're actually being shot from the ground as well, which, you know, it's just horrendous animal cruelty. Everyone is up in arms about it. I don't know anybody that supports, other than the trolls on social media. There are some trolls on social media that are paid to miss any political arguments around what's going on here. It's absolutely disgusting animal cruelty. And to think that we call ourselves a civilized society, the world is watching Australia now in shame. They cannot believe around the world what is going on. And to say that it's
I'm
humane.
going to have to wrap up here soon because we have other media here that needs to take some photos as well. So can maybe everybody just come inside and we're going to get a photo, say goodbye here, and also for the Telegraph.
Thank you so much.
Good luck
Say
down there.
goodbye.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Everybody just say goodbye and acknowledge Aldwyn and Lin.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Keep talking.
Keep up the great work.
Thank you from all of us.
Thank you so much.
Over
Appreciate
and
it.
out. I'll leave it to you. Can you cut me off?
Okay, yes.
Thanks,
yes.
Sue.
Now.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Keep up
Bye.
the good work.
Thank you, you too. Bye. Oh my gosh,
Okay.
Lynn, wow. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts on that?
Well, you can see how much pain people are going through. Some, like when I was down there myself, even like after the last big cull, like the people that have spent the time in the mountains, they're just gutted, absolutely gutted. You know, they know the figures, they know the facts, they know the Brumbies aren't doing anything. They know that, you know, last time the park got closed, that there were massive explosions, like Snowy Hydro is doing things that they don't disclose to the public. You know, whole bulldozers go through and these telegraph lines, because even though we've got green energy, miraculously, we still need to be connected to the grid. So, you know, all around Australia, this green energy is taking out natural habitat. And because they've declared green energy such an urgency, they've actually taken down the laws that protect ecosystems in the way of green energy. So it means they can go and cull koalas, they can go and do all this damage in these areas like the Snowy Mountains, and they actually don't have to justify it. So their best way is to blame something else. So honestly, the pain of these people and the hurt. And I guess the big thing about it is they know that what they're saying is just not true. So it's one huge lie, and it's all attached to the same monologue that's been in the media, and it will be an exit strategy monologue. So I think everyone's just lost faith in mainstream media, but 100% lost faith in the fact that our government, like some of those people said, can go and shoot these animals. It's barbaric. It's cruel. It's just, I mean, I know I went to a funeral today, and it was too much for me, because I'm thinking at the same time, I'm sitting there seeing all these people grieving. I'm thinking, how many Brumbies are getting shot at the same time? So, yeah, it's just not okay. None of it's okay. Not one piece from the beginning they started it to now. I mean, who knows what they're doing? I heard they're blasting in there, actually. So, they go on about these Brumbies putting a few, like, hoof marks on an area where there had been water. So it wasn't even grass there. It was literally somewhere where there'd been water. So the plants probably hadn't grown anyway. And then they say that's damage, and then they can do whatever they want. It's not okay. And like they said with the tourism, they have big plans coming up, big plans. And it's all part of a 2030 program to lock people out of national parks and put high-end tourism in there, or tourism that they choose into the park. And I can tell you it'll be a lot more intrusive than any Brumbie will ever be in that park.
Oh, Yeah, it's absolutely shocking what's going on. And interestingly, a lot of Aussies still and people around the world have no idea this is actually happening. So for those who are tuning in right now on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, please share the link for this video or audio wherever you're tuning into this. Share this around the place. Let people know what's going on. We've definitely lost faith in our government here in Australia. We have lost faith in the mainstream media, although it is good to see some mainstream media now starting to report about it, like Daily Telegraph and 2SM, and a few people are coming out now and talking about it. But, where were you at the beginning when we were, before this actually happened? I mean,
when we could actually stop it, where was the media when we could actually stop this program going ahead? Because if they kill all these Brumbies, like we were talking about, the genetics in these Brumbies, they don't exist anywhere in the world. So, we're talking about protecting endangered species. That's it. So why are we killing them? And I'll tell you why, because the genetics in wild horses are even more valuable than domestic horses. So our Australian alpine horses are some of the most valuable horses in the world. So if there's other countries that, want us pretty much desolate and at mercy of the rest of the world, they would take out our transport. They would take out our food supplies, even this wanting to shoot all these feral animals. As Victoria and I talked about yesterday, if you have an area where man doesn't exist, the feral animals pretty much work in balance with the area. All you got to take man out. And some of the places where they were experimenting with getting rid of, say, rats or whatever they happened to do, they did it on an island. But what they were doing when they were taking the marsupials out, they were using pesticides. And we now know that the baits that they were using, the raticides, have been banned. So when they were using these baits to get rid of, saying, oh my God, the mice are so bad, they're taking out all the predatory birds. So the wedge-tailed eagles eat a lot of these animals that eat the bait, and therefore they would die. So it's only natural that once they've baited all the ground marsupials and got rid of the poison, once the poison's not there, it's like the weed control. Once the poison's not there, nature will recover. It's perfectly natural. But nature would have recovered with the Brumbies there as well. In fact, the Brumbies, as I said, lived 180 years in that environment before they became a problem.
Yeah, it's absolutely. I am just blown away. I cannot believe that this is actually happening. It's like something out of a sci-fi movie. It's absolute insanity. And to think that we think we can trust the RSPCA, right? This is like the biggest animal rights group in Australia. And, I know some people have worked inside the RSPCA, and there's been a lot of euthanasia of animals that shouldn't have happened within the RSPCA. So that kind of stuff goes on as well for what's meant to be a, organization that protects our animals and looks after the best interests of our animals. And yes, they may do some good things out there, but really you kind of think, well, who the hell can you trust nowadays? No wonder people are having such massive anxiety issues and depression and heart attacks. And, the ripple effect of this on the community is massive. And we have to keep standing up. We have to keep speaking up, and we have to keep at this, because there's a lot more people than there are politicians. And as, you and Victoria were saying, some fascinating stuff on our Total Truth show that we just had this week about the Brumbies. That was an excellent show. And as you mentioned, Lynn, you've done a documentary called Brumbies Last Stand on Travel Wild TV. Now, you were sharing about how the Brumbies walk in single file. Can you talk a bit about that so people actually get how gentle these animals are? They are not feral pests. And share your experience of that, please.
So if you go up to Kosciuszko National Park and you ever walk along the tracks, a lot of people's lives were saved because of what they call the Brumbie trails. Now, Brumbies walk in single file when they're moving distances, which means they follow each other one by one. So you can actually just get this pathway, which is less like, a bike track, much less than a bike track. It's a single file, tiny little track that goes through. Now, that's how they move those distances in the forest. And when they finally get to an area where they might be grazing, then they'll spread out, but they're not going fast. They're not, putting lots of weight on, and they're very careful with how they tread. And they talk about the hard hooves, but the Brumbie hooves are not shoed. And they've also lived in that environment so long. So their hooves aren't these, hooves that have become super hard living on concrete or anything like that. Like they have to shoe horses in order for their feet not to get damaged. So Brumbies don't necessarily have these really hard hooves. Where they take the photos, and this was another thing that was just so frustrating, when they were taking the photos of the horse damage, they were taking it in one small area of a park. And I actually went to all the places where they took the photos, and I saw where a Brumbie might cross. And a Brumbie might cross one section of a river, and they all cross there because it's shallower. And they don't, they go in that shallow section. So you've got one little track crossing this thing. And then, so people had cameras that were set up. 4-wheel drives were going through there. And then these people were saying how the Brumbies have done this damage, and they actually have footage of 4-wheel drives going through there. National parks, they have these weed control quad bikes that they go around. I'd watch them spraying all the banks of the rivers. We're talking about pesticides. They've got corroboree frogs there that are some of the most endangered frogs in the world, and they're spraying pesticides. And Aldwyn, you know what we've dealt with up here with the invasive species unit, and I have to call this out. The invasive species unit actually poisoned me because they poisoned my creek with a fire ant bait because they blamed the fire ant. And of course, the rain runs off into the water, and I got so sick I couldn't move for 3 days. They also poisoned me under their helicopters when they were spraying around Currumbin Valley, and I lost lung function for a month. So I know how invasive species have pretty much harmed pets, people. Like, I can't tell you how much damage they've done to the southeast Queensland environment by pesticiding source waters. And as I said, I think yesterday, the source waters of the Snowy Mountains feed 3 states: New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, and of course Canberra. So if you poison and use those weed controls, which they had been doing leading up to now, which they've been asked to stop because of the marine degradation that happened over the last 23 to 27, like we saw all the marine die-offs here. Remember when it rained and what happened in South Australia? They're poisoning source waters. So the Brumbies are the biggest cover-up I think the planet has for covering up the damage that was done by pesticides that were banned overseas in countries like China, who sold it to us, banned in China, America, and Europe. And Australia had loopholes in their law that allowed all these toxic chemicals to come here. And because they released all these chemicals that they knew were degrading because they'd been banned overseas, the Brumbies had to be a storyline that they developed in order to get away with this. So, yeah, because I got so harmed by it, I have, it doesn't bother me to tell them, no, they do harm, and they've harmed lots of people, lots of wildlife. So it's not an environmental group. The invasive species is probably one of the most toxic environmental groups I've ever heard of. And sorry.
If you want to know what's going on, follow the money trail, as it says in the Thrive documentaries. Who's profiting from this? What is to come of all this? And if people just do a little bit of digging, a little bit of research, they will find the truth of what's going on here. And what we definitely know is that there's a lot of smoke and mirrors going on. There's a lot of false information coming from mainstream media and government, and we're not being told the whole truth. And people are waking up to what's going on. They're not believing the lies. They want accountability. They want justice done. And in the meantime, unfortunately, a whole lot of Brumbies are going to get killed in the process, and so many other animals. And your poisoning happened when you just went for a swim, right? You just went for, and your dog.
The first poisoning, remember, there's been 2 poisonings because the invasive species thought, as you know, Aldwyn, here, when we were dealing with it in Southeast Queensland, they were everywhere. They were poisoning every bit of land they possibly could. And this was very early in the piece. This was in February, March, when the very first time they started the program. They had about 25 people running around with their cheese graters, putting all the fire ant bait out in Currumbin Creek. The next day, the weather kind of moved in and it all washed into the creek. Well, I went swimming because I go swimming there every day. And I got in the water. I was healthy. When I got in the water, I was swimming for about an hour and a half. And then I just started feeling so violently ill that I had to get out of the water, and I just got home and for the next 3 days didn't move. And then the following weeks, like we had dogs that were sick. Channel 9 did a report on it because, you know, people's dogs were all getting sick. People's dogs were dying. And radio silence. But not only worse than that, the council attacked anyone that mentioned it. So they were completely covering up, and the council knew what was going on because they've signed off on all these toxins going into the water. I mean, what is it? It's hundreds of millions of dollars of chemical are poured into our source waters, and then they wonder why there's big marine die-offs happen, you know, when the creek waters run into the ocean. And, you know, this is exactly what happened to the Great Barrier Reef many years ago when they started testing these chemicals. So, yeah, invasive species, I'd love to do a full, or someone that understands in government to do a full audit into how much money those guys have got, how much they've spent on chemicals, how much they've spent on shooting things, and how much, you know, four-wheel drives have rocked around all these valuable ecosystems, how many cars, how many helicopters, like Brumbies, and you've got this, who's feral?
Yeah, exactly. Well, the politicians and the people behind this absolutely have on their hands and are as feral as they come, and very dark, evil people must be behind this. I don't know how these people can live with themselves. I really don't get it. But, you know, some people say, well, they're actually not really human, the people behind this. They may be from another planet. But, you know, definitely anyone that has any kind of empathy or connection with the land or animals would never do anything like this, yet alone for your safety and for your best interest. You know, whenever they say it's all safe and effective, you know, we saw that all through COVID. We saw it was not safe and effective what they were dishing out at that time, and we've seen the heart attacks, and we've seen the turbo cancers that have come from those toxic chemicals that the politicians were exempt from, by the way. They were exempt from it, but it was safe and effective for everyone else. And meanwhile, we've just been people been popping off like flies. It's been absolutely horrible. And, you know, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. So we have to keep standing. We have to keep speaking up about this. The fire ant, the toxic chemicals that they were putting everything was actually making the fire ant problem worse. And it wasn't even a big problem in the first place. You can actually kill fire ants if you're really worried about it with hot water. But of course, there's no money in hot water, right? There's certain hot treatments we know that can kill fire ants if you're really concerned about it. However, what we saw is actually they're making the problem worse if you look into it, and a lot of our animals were dying or having serious issues. Cows, sheep, chickens were dying, and people were sent this poison in the mail, and they were told with brochures funded by taxpayers, they were told, put this in your yard, this poison, and they don't call it poison, of course, but we know it's poison. Put this in your yard, even if you don't see fire ants, because they might be under the ground. Meanwhile, people putting it in their yard, their animals are getting sick, their dogs, their cats, they're, you know, if not dying, and you know, all of this sort of thing was happening. And so people were getting sent it in the mail. They were knocking on people's doors and coming onto people's land, or sometimes not even knocking on the door, they just come onto the land and put the poison everywhere. And with 5 hectare blocks and above, they were from helicopters. Once again, helicopters are just putting this toxic shit everywhere that was getting into people's water tanks, that was poisoning people through their water supplies. And it actually says on the bottle that it should not be going anywhere near waterways or any water. And yet they're putting it out from helicopters over people's water tanks, right? Like, what the hell?
That's exactly what was happening in the Snowy Mountains. So at the same time we were getting poisoned, they had the weed control down there. So if it wasn't fire ants they were fighting weeds. So there were all these programs that were created because, you know, the laws changed and all this, like I said, the floodgate of biosecurity came in the door where these chemicals from other countries that were banned were allowed into our country. So, you know, it's time and time again, you can do the audits on all the riverways and you will find that it's very, I've done it. You will find the correlations of all this stuff. So my whole thing is these Brumbies, I just want to bring it back to the Brumbies. They're the most magnificent animals. These guys can take the money. If it's money you need, just take the money. Just leave the Brumbies. And look, we will, you know, if you leave them there and you stop poisoning, then we can see that the Brumbies aren't the problem. Stop the damage from the snowy hydro. Be accountable for the damage you're actually doing. Don't pass it, because as soon as they pass it to these invasive species, we actually aren't getting to measure properly on the earth what's harming or creating these ecological changes. So if you look at this aerial, I've seen the aerial pictures of where this poisoning's gone place. Take South Australia, right? You know, that massive marine devastation they had. That all correlates with the timing they were doing these programs over there. So when you see these areas where the algal bloom goes, where the algal blooms are, guess what happens after all these chemicals mix with everything else and kill all the microbial soils? You see heat. So they were saying that climate change is happening because of all this heat. But what if they're measuring the effects of chemicals, and this whole thing has been, you know, it's quite unreal what we haven't looked at for some of these big disasters that are happening. The Brumbies are amazing because, number one, they do work as a natural lawnmower, so you don't need these pesticides. They've worked into the environment and they've got genetics that are irreplaceable. If they're really worried about fuel, then hey, why don't we get some kind of tourism going that involves horses instead of, you know, quad bikes or, you know, cars that have to rip up the mountain? What if, you know, there were horses that went up the mountain, you know, and they only had very few cars that went up, but people could go up on horses or things like that. Like, there's so many things they could do to bring the best out of these horses, help with the environmental problems that they have, and make the planet absolutely beautiful. And think of this, Aldwyn, think of a world where humans are kind to animals and see the magnificence of what they offer us. It would be a world that's just so kind. You'll be kinder to your family, because I've heard that people that harm animals are much more likely to be aggressive and angry to their families or to other people. Even if they're good to their family, they'll be very aggressive to other people. So it's known that someone who can shoot or maim an animal or hurt an animal is far more likely to hurt another person. So yeah, bring back the Brumbies. Stop shooting, please stop shooting.
Yeah, and the sad thing is there were so many people willing to take some of these Brumbies, these few Brumbies that are up there. So so many people to take them onto their properties, and they were told not to go onto Kosciuszko to actually rescue these Brumbies. So instead, whichever hunters are behind this that are getting off on this kind of stuff, it is sick. They are sick in the head. And it is disgusting behaviour, especially for what we call a civilised society in Australia. I am absolutely appalled that we are allowing this to go ahead, and we're saying that it's actually, you know, that it's humane. Let's talk about that word humane for a moment, Lynn. What are your thoughts on that word humane?
Well, I think, as I think I've said it a few times, I think we're still learning to find our way on the planet. I don't think we've been here long enough to really fit in. Why would you change your planet to have to live here? None of it makes sense. The big tech that they're rolling out and misplacing all these animals, it doesn't make any sense to me, you know, that we're so enthralled by machines, yet we've got all these magnificent forms of life around us. I mean, I've done 10,000 dives, you know, I spend as much time as I can out in the bush or an environment, and I really try and understand the nuances of what's going on around me, and I feel much happier in those environments. And I think these people are definitely human. I think what happens is they lock themselves in these rooms and boardrooms and meetings and everything, and they make decisions where they're not actually looking or thinking about what they're making decisions on. And I think if the decisions were made on ground, localized, not globalized, I think I said that yesterday, I think the world would make better decisions. And I think with the Brumbies, you know, anyone that says they can kill it just needs to go and sit with them for a couple of days. And if you don't connect to the Brumbie, then probably there's, you know, stuff wrong with you, where you need to learn to connect with animals or you know, other things, and have a look at why you feel so much anger towards something, or if there's feral. But you've got to remember that Australia's been lied to for decades on this Brumbie game. They've been brainwashed. The Invasive Species Unit literally sent out emails a very long time to start persuading the Australian people how to do. And if the Australian people aren't up looking at the mountains to see the truth, they're going to believe what they're told. And then if that's enforced by media, I would like to see how many press releases were sent by the Invasive Species Unit to the networks like ABC, Channel 7 and all those. I've seen some of the press releases they did for the fire ants straight to the network with a check, you know. So this is propaganda TV. It's not mainstream media. It's actually propaganda media. And, you know, soon as this media stops being propaganda media and speaks for the people, the whole world will change again. So until then, they've got us.
Yes, and thank goodness for social media and for independent media, and thank goodness for uncensored media as well, because we saw a lot of censorship on Facebook and YouTube, particularly through the pandemic, and it goes on. It goes on. Thankfully, we have things like BitChute and Rumble and Telegram. We have other forms of media and other ways to get the information out there, and I'm very grateful for that. Now, Lin, for those who don't know you, it's quite extraordinary some of the things you've done. You've done, you know, over 85 broadcast shows filmed in over 150 locations around the world in the last 15, 20 years or so. Can you share a bit about what got you into being such a passionate lover of the planet and helping, you know, be such a crusader for Mother Earth?
I grew up looking after wildlife because my mum was a wildlife carer. My grandfather was the head of forestry for Australia, so I spent a lot of time, you know, his knowledge of forest was through the roof. And my dad was an earth scientist, so I had no hope of not having something to do with the earth. So when I was little, I grew up looking after possums and, you know, a whole lot of animals that had a raw stick when it came to, you know, the lifestyles that we're living. So I became, you know, very animate that I was going to give a voice to some of these animals. If they couldn't say something, then I'd try and explain that on their behalf. And I did. I traveled for many years around the world. And I think at first, you know, my first series was all about marine environments. So I traveled all around the world because I wanted everyone to meet. I'd done 10,000 dives. And I wanted everyone to meet the animals that were under there. Well, I probably hadn't done 10,000 by that stage, but I'd done thousands. And I wanted everyone to see the connections, like how the littlest creatures on the planet, which were the corals, could make this giant reef, you know. And everyone says, oh, but, you know, the apex predators are the most important. I said, they're absolutely important. But the little guys like the ants or the corals or the, you know, even weeds can do amazing things because we call them weeds, but they're just plants that are stabilizing earth. They all do something constructive. They all give something back. So I saw this ecosystem where all these animals helped each other. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. Some of them ate each other, but, you know, there's a whole network there where the ecosystem worked because everything had a role. So I guess the more I dived, the more I wanted to explain that to people. But as we were diving, we were noticing, you know, perhaps there were less sharks, less fish. So we started noticing declines in populations. So then I started getting concerned about that. Then we, you know, as time went on, there'll be things that we'd see in the environment because we're spending so much time there. And that's when I started thinking, oh, you know, I've got to tell the truth about that. I'd love to do all the David Attenborough perfect stuff, but at the same time, someone's got to keep visual of documenting when things aren't quite right. So was it overfishing? You know, what had been harming these environments? So, and I did the same thing on land. So we went into forests, Tasmania, where the giant trees are, and we fought for the Styx Valley. You know, we climbed the 80-meter trees, you know, like Bob Brown's doing, you know. I got so much admiration for the people on the ground that are sitting in trees or working with these endangered animals or these species and actually saying, hey, guys, have a look at what's happening here. In fact, you know, bringing these people and making these people, you know, letting them have a voice for these animals, other people can then share that love or that connection. Yeah, I stood up a tree like Bob Brown's down there at 80 meters high with John Butler. You know, John Butler went up there and played his song. Well, we went up there to see the people that had been sitting in the tree for months on end. So, yeah, and I guess every time I did another series and I was in an ecosystem, if it had been cleared, like the orangutans or the elephants, like I was always telling their stories. And it just seemed that it was common factors, deforestation, chemicals, you know, environmental degradation, where people just burn land because they want a monoculture. So the themes started getting repetitive. And that's when I realized, okay, well, it's not rocket science. You can walk into an environment and immediately see what's wrong with that environment. And so when someone tries to tell you that something else is damaging the environment, you go, yeah, no. I've been in way too many environments, looking at too many situations to ever be able to cover up something. And if I don't understand straight away, I'll spend the time or the energy or the effort to try and work out the patterning of what's happening. So yeah, I just love animals, Aldwyn.
And me too, I must say, from a very young child, I was always fascinated by animals. I used to love the David Attenborough documentaries. I was just like glued to the screen. And back in the days before social media, when all we had was our TV and some radio, mainstream media, I used to love David Attenborough documentaries. I would just be so wowed by, these amazing creatures. And what I find is that people who can connect with animals and who actually take the time to see how extraordinary the animals are that we have on the planet, when we get how amazing animals are, we get how amazing we are as human beings. And as they say, hurt people and hurt people hurt animals, unfortunately. Usually they start off hurting animals and then they go to hurt people. And a lot of psychopaths actually started out hurting animals. So, it's something that we need to keep standing up about and reporting about, and not it's not okay. It's not okay to harm another. And human beings are the only species that actively ruin our environment, interestingly. And I saw a documentary a little while ago called Bag It. This Bag It documentary was talking about plastics, and this is a big concern. It was saying in this Bag It documentary that in the last 10 years we've used more plastics than the previous 100 years. And of course, a lot of this is coming out of China as well, right? Plastic upon plastic packaging, and just such a consumerist society. And I've done a lot of traveling myself as well, and I remember going from when I went from Bali over to Gili Air across, about a 2 to 3 hour boat trip, and I remember about half an hour of going across this ocean where it was just all plastics in the middle of the ocean, and one plastic bag that a turtle swallows will kill a turtle, right? Just as an example. So I have serious concerns about the toxicity of the plastics that the animals are eating, or the sea life are eating, and of course people then consume the fish and then getting microtoxicity and all of that, right? It's a massive concern. The ripple effect of what's happening from all of this with human beings is very concerning.
Yeah, I've seen turtles that have been munching on plastic and had to take it off them. And I think, and I've, like you, in places like Bali, I've gone over there and we've done massive cleanups, with people that have wanted to clean up, with villages and stuff like that. And we filmed the villagers trying to clean up this stuff. And it was interesting, in places like Borneo, in an island in the middle of nowhere, absolutely nowhere, there's an eddy, and this island's just full of trash because of the currents have taken it there. Christmas Island, when I went to Christmas Island, guess what? Couldn't find any of those yellow crazy ants that they said were killing all the crabs. I spent 3 weeks looking for those guys when they first started that program in Christmas Island. But what we did find in Christmas Island was where the turtles were digging, they were just, as they were digging their holes, they were just digging in plastic, because the this current system on this one beach just brought all this. And so they're trying to lay their eggs and it was just full of plastics. But the thing is you can see the one thing about plastic, if it's big enough, you can see it. But, this is the dangerous thing about chemicals and microplastics. That's the stuff you can't see in our environment. So if they put a chemical, if they just get a helicopter and dump all this chemical into the river, they go, oh, yeah, great, we got rid of that, dumped it, great, great. That was $1 million drop, getting rid of all those chemicals into the rivers. But our rivers tell the story. Our rivers hold on. Water has memory. Everyone that jumps in a water, when you jump in the ocean and it's just alive and you feel that tingling. If you jump into a polluted place, it's heavy, it's dead, it's hot, there's no life, there's no breath to it. So that's why I think I'm pretty adamant about trying to stop this chemical pollution we're having, because that's what's really harming Australia at the moment. That's what's done our big marine die-offs, and I won't cover that up. I'm happy to work on solutions to stop that, but they just need to stop the chemicals. And a shout out to APVMA, who allows these chemicals that are banned all over the world to come and dump on us. Like, seriously, thanks a lot. You nearly killed me. So, and I think that's the problem. APVMA are the regulators of the chemical. So they basically get paid by the chemical companies to regulate the chemical companies. And that's what's going wrong in Australia right now, is we all know that the circular monies that's coming through. And I just say to everyone, we have a chance, right? The world is starting to respond. You know, media, you got to, if you shoot these Brumbies, it's not over, because everybody knows that it was actually, well, not everyone, because they might have their head down, bum up, but a lot of people now know that they were just a scapegoat. So how about if media starts being responsible? And, you know, this green energy needs to be addressed. How can you kill koalas in areas if it's not green? None of it's green. And some of these green energies are so mineral intensive that the mining companies are sponsoring people like the invasive species unit. Why are they doing that? I don't know. What do they want to do in the snowy mountains? Right? So there's a lot of things going on that we don't know about. World's beautiful. Nature will recover. You just got to stop polluting it. And I have heard that a lot of these programs are being stopped, which is why if the Brumbies had a chance, everyone would see it was never the Brumbies in the first place. So we just got to try and hold on to these Brumbies.
The thing is, we have lost a lot of our species, and in fact koalas are critically endangered. We know in April the Victorian government just shot from helicopters out of the sky. They shot 1,000 koalas, and that was saying, oh, they weren't going to survive through the bushfire or after the bushfire, which really, like, that's just a pathetic excuse for that kind of cruelty for an critically endangered Australian iconic animal like the koala. I mean, this is just sick in the head stuff. This is just crazy. So
isn't it ironic that suddenly there's all these like all these things happening, and if you actually follow the money trail after the bushfire, hundreds of millions of dollars change hands. So
yes,
you know, how do we know they're not spreading the fire ants? Well, we actually probably assume they are, because they weren't that problem before they came. How do we know they didn't spread the weeds? Well, I've seen where they've thrown them out a hole, and you can basically see where they're throwing the weeds out to put them into these national parks, because I've been to that national park. There was not a weed in it 2 years prior, till they decided they're going to do a weeding program. So all these things, when they start becoming big money, they miraculously become a big problem. So all we've got to do is start defunding the killing, the poisoning, the pesticides, and these problems will simply vanish, because the money won't be there to attract the people that want to do the killing, the culling, the poisoning, and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's it. You know, and you know how they say if you throw money at something, the problem always becomes bigger.
Yes, and I think they're starting a lot of the fires as well, from what I've seen, because it's interesting to see what goes in after fires happen as well. You know, fast trains,
the infrastructure.
The infrastructure that happens after fires happen to sweep through areas that can't be controlled suddenly. You know,
the AI centres.
Yeah, we suddenly have water shortage in Australia to put out fires, you know, with certain fires. And in America as well. We've seen this in America and other places around the world. So, yes, question everything, my friends, question everything. Now, you actually do have a great documentary about toxic waters as well. Can you share a little bit about that, your documentary?
Yeah, I mean, we've got Brumbies Last Stand, which is basically to show how Brumbies behave and talk to the local people and get the real counts, the real data. Then Toxic Waters was the one that I did on here, from the invasive species that have poisoned our rivers over since 23 to 27. And just remember, 27's coming up. So a lot of these poisoning programs are stopping a bit early because of the pressure, but they're only ever a 4-year period and an allocated fund. So as soon as that period finishes, there's another 4-year period that stimulates the economic growth. So Toxic Waters tells the true story of literally people whose lands are getting invaded, the extensiveness of this pesticide poisoning through our areas, and the fact that they're literally the Great Dividing Range. So they're targeting source waterways. And it teaches you about the Great Dividing Range, it teaches you about the great watersheds. So it teaches you how they can become conveyor belts for anything, all these toxins that flow into them. And then it follows it all the way out to sea, and it shows you the repercussions of and when the big storms come through, the effects into our marine environment. So yeah, toxic waters, there's a 2-part series. Number 1 sort of talks about Western Australia and around through the Daintree and sort of down to southeast Queensland. And then the second episode talks about southeast Queensland, because we had so much of this baiting over and over and over again that it became almost a daily ritual that someone would come up and poison some part of our country, our little beautiful creek system, or the beautiful place. The southeast Queensland is one of the most biodiverse regions in the world, and here they were putting I don't know, I think I had the stats at some stage, 400, it was 1,400 ton in the last year that they did the big baiting down of chemical down our riverways. That's insane.
Wow. And you've been doing this for quite a while. What are some of the biggest changes you've noticed, I guess, in the last 15, 20 years that you've been documenting our environment and what's going on? What are you noticing more so now than maybe 10, 15 years ago?
So I think that the biggest decade that we've had the problem has been the last decade. And in 2015, all this money started getting thrown at foundations, and laws got changed. And laws got changed from biosecurity being able to manually check things to pretty much all this stuff being able to be digitized. So the problem is when you've got these people making decisions somewhere in the world about, yep, this is they'll design a circular economy, but they weren't not actually on the ground watching what happens after all this money's been spent on these programs that they're designing in another part of the world. So I just noticed that we lost control in Australia in 2015. Prior to that, you could kind of sort of see, you could understand when they were doing the baiting in Tasmania. You could see the forests being pulled down. You could see, so it was, but you could really sort of see what was happening. Then it suddenly became a free-for-all in 2015. And this, I call it the decade of change, where I don't know who was running our country. It wasn't us anymore. It was, I guess, corporate people in a spreadsheet. And that's what I felt was this last decade's gone absolutely nuts. So it's time to bring that back. It's time to take control back of our country and really do all the audits on the environmental degradation that's been done over the last decade. And only then, I mean, I've been auditing a lot of it, so I have a lot of audits that I've done, but there's just so many problems that we have over this last 10 years. So yeah, we just got to fix it. And the leaders need to listen. They need to start dropping these big programs and goals that they're getting if the goals are harming what's happening in front of us right now. So yeah, that's enough.
Thank you, Lynn. And we have had, petitions going around to help save the Brumbies. Over 230,000 people have signed these petitions. I believe even more now have been signing petitions. People have been writing to ministers. What are some other things people can do, some positive things to take action to help? I mean, they can obviously share this video, put their comments. If you've got some more information that might help us widen our perspective, please pop your comments into the chat here. What are some other things people can do, Lynn, to get empowered around what's going on in the world?
I always say use your senses, come back to thinking. Like, sure, artificial intelligence is great because it makes everything easy, but are we missing the processes in the meantime? Like, step outside and really look at your environment. See what changes may have happened over the last few years. Have a look. See if it's really, is it for better or is it for worse? Like, do we want these concrete jungles just to get more concrete? Is that the type of life we want? Do we want to just be addicted to our phones? Do we want to be addicted to our computers? Sure, they've got a place, but we've also got to remember, what are we losing in the background? So I always say, use your eyes, use your ears, think. Like, if someone tells you something, or if you hear something in media, don't just believe it. Have a look, see what they're saying, and then see if what they're saying and what's actually happening because you're the people on the ground there. So if you live in these places and you can be the one that's documenting it, then you can give that truth to that area. You know, you and I can be here, or we can go and investigate something, but we can't be everywhere. So we need the people like the Brumby people we just talked to be guarding the Brumbies, to be telling the world the truth about the Brumbies, not some person that lives in another country that has no idea that these animals are even, you know, these incredible animals that have these wild instincts that are irreplaceable anywhere in the world. They just went on a spreadsheet and went, yeah, right, if you kill all these Brumbies, that means that your $106 million here of damage that you did will wipe that out. So that's pretty much the transaction it was. That's all it was, you know. Brumbies on a bit of paper, someone needing a debt to be paid. Oh, well, how about I kill, you know, let's tell them there's 16,000 horses because each horse is worth a figure, right? So, you know, it's just numbers on a spreadsheet, and none of the numbers are adding up. I don't know who the accountants are running Australia. They should all be shot.
Yes. There's windmills they want to put in Kosciuszko as well, apparently. So the windmills kill millions of birds. They're not good for the environment. There's a whole lot of false information around windmills and the green energy. So, yes, do your research, guys. Do your research. And, Lynn, you know, it's been so great having you as a friend and as a great supporter also of our animal action events over the years. We met many years ago when you came and spoke at one of our early animal action events, and we've run several events together as well. We've done some animal action film nights, and this year in October we're going to be doing an animal action and Travel Wild TV retreat to Sri Lanka. We're going to be visiting some of the amazing safari parks and amazing animal adventures in October this year in Sri Lanka. So very excited to team up with you on that. And we do have a few openings for people to join us on that. So just reach out to myself or Lynn if you want to find out more about that coming up as well. And Lynn, for those who want to connect with you, we've got your Travel Wild TV here on YouTube. They can subscribe there to connect with you. And anything else you want to share?
And have a look. Most of the good shows are in the documentaries. So I've got my series there as well. But if they go into the documentaries, they'll see Toxic Waters, Brumbies Last Stand. And I'm going to be putting the Endangered season up too. There's 25 episodes of the Endangered series that hasn't, you know, I think there's maybe 4 episodes up there. So there's a lot more content that hasn't been put on my channel yet. But we'll get there.
Do you have a favorite of all the documentaries you produced? Is there a favorite that you have out of all of them, or something that really stands out?
No, because each documentary tells a story. And when I say favorite, a lot of them I shed a lot of tears for some of them, and then other ones, I mean, I of course I love the marine travel because I love getting eye to eye with a whale, or, you know, up close and personal, as close and personal as you can without harming or disturbing wildlife, because I don't like jumping on wildlife or anything like that. I'm very passive when I work with wildlife because I like to respect boundaries and really communicate with these animals. So, you know, I like you, I think people like Attenborough and, you know, Jane Goodall, Brude Goldacass, all these people that lived with the animals and have passion for the animal, like they're the people that is what inspired me when I was a kid. People like Valerie Taylor, who, you know, died with sharks, and Jacques Cousteau, all these legends, and a lot of, you know, there's some incredible people around these days that do some incredible things. I've got some great friends that are new wow photographers, you know, free divers, all sorts of things. So yeah.
Well,
so my favorite, too hard.
Was there a favorite encounter you had with any animals? Was it the whale? Was it, you know,
the sperm whales? Probably in Pico Island in Portugal. A baby sperm whale had just been born. We literally were swimming they were in a marguerite pattern, and that's what the sperm whales do. They go nose to nose, the mothers and aunties do when a baby's getting born. And we were just kind of making our way over to this group that were nose to nose. I was with Ron and Val Taylor, actually, an American photographer. We have permits to be with these whales. And just as we were coming over to them, they broke off from their Marguerite pattern, and the little baby was there going, wee, swinging around. And they literally swam straight toward us. So it was about, at the time they swam toward us, probably about 10 big females and this little baby calf that was out of control, not really knowing how to swim very well yet. And they just almost ran into us, and because there was so much commotion in the water, the little whale saw us and thought, oh my God, who are you? And he literally, we were in the water 2.5 hours with these animals, by the way, because other whales would come out of the blue and meet this little, calf and swim away. And so we got to see probably 25 whales during that time coming up and down and stuff like that. And the little whale nuzzled me. So he literally was nuzzling me, and I had to keep pushing him away because he was 10 foot long, but he felt like tissue paper. So I gently had to just kind of push away from him, and he just felt like the softest tissue paper. Yeah, that was incredible. That was incredible.
Wow. Extraordinary. Wow, we live in such an amazing world. And look, despite all the crap that's going on out there, it's still a beautiful world. What a Wonderful World is one of my favorite songs. And I think it's important to remember we can only control what we can control. And I think there's a lot of amazing Facebook groups, the Brumbie groups. There's a lot of amazing people doing great things for animals and the environment as well. And I want to take my hat off to you. Say thank you for those out there who are being a stand, who are speaking up. You are not alone. Okay, so I think in community, there's unity in community, and I think more so now we need to really get the power of the people power coming together. There are a lot more people than politicians, so let's just keep the good fight on there and keep being a stand. I think every little bit makes a difference, the ripple effect of what we put out there. Thank you so much, Lynn. And for those who want to connect with me, you can go to a linktree/Aldwyn. I've got a YouTube channel there as well, Media Queen TV. You can check it out. Also, all my other links, Instagram, LinkedIn, all my other links, check it out there. We've got the Global Good News Challenge every month, which is a way to get into gratitude and good news. No matter what is going on in the world, you can lift your energy by getting into gratitude. And I am certainly very, very grateful for you, Lynn. You're an awesome human being. I am so honored to have you with us today. And thank you to all of our beautiful people in Martin Place down in Sydney for the vigil, it wasn't obviously a silent vigil. There'll probably be some silent moments, but it was actually quite a loud vigil for the Brumbies. And sometimes we've just got to speak up, right? Speak up and be heard. So thank you so much, everyone who's joined us from Sydney, Sue, Fenn, and everyone else who joined us there. Thank you so much. Lynn, any final words before we wrap up today?
No, let's hope the Brumbies, which is the fire horse, unite us and make us, kind of teach Australia that we've got to bring this country back to beauty. Let's be at one with nature, not against nature. Green energy is not worth it if it's going to take out some of these valuable species. We just got to remember, it doesn't matter what you do, you got to be responsible for your actions. So Brumbies, if you unite us, then the spirit of the fire horse will still be there.
Yes, love that. Sending love to everyone out there. Thank you, those who've joined us on the live. We have on LinkedIn here, Nizigi Yamana, Aimable, I think that says. Very interesting. Thank you so much for joining us on LinkedIn there. Those on Facebook, YouTube, wherever else you're watching us, thank you so much for joining us. Please let us know what your thoughts are about what's going on right now. Please share this if you think some other people could benefit from what they've heard here as far as getting the word out, educating people. Get informed, get empowered. I always say thank you so much, Lynn. Thank you, Sue. Thank you for joining us. Have an awesome night, and we'll see you again soon on Media Queen TV. Bye for now. Bye.
Bye.